These are the answers to the Earth Science 2005 SOL test. Number 1. A major problem with depending on fossil fuels as primary energy sources is that they are... Well, fossil fuels, the problems include things like pollution, as well as the fact that fossil fuels are non-renewable, which means that they cannot be replaced once they have been used. So the correct answer is C, non-renewable. Number 2, which of the following puts the steps of a scientific experiment in the correct order? We would begin by stating a problem, and then we would propose an outcome or a hypothesis. Then we would actually do the experiment and gather data, and then finally make a conclusion. So the correct answer to this question is C. Number 3, most modern geologists have argued that a global catastrophe may have caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. So what was this catastrophe? When a large object hits Earth, particles of dust and rock fly into the atmosphere. Many scientists believe that an asteroid impact may have caused the dinosaurs to become extinct. So correct answer is A, an asteroid impact with the Earth. Number 4, what is the approximate percentage of the Earth that is illuminated by the sun at any given time? Only half of the Earth is lit by the sun at one time, so we are looking at 50%. Number 5, compared to the Rocky Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains are much. So the Appalachian Mountains formed roughly about 500 million years ago, whereas the Rocky Mountains formed about 70 to 80 million years ago. So the Appalachian Mountains are older. Correct answer is A. Number 6, there was an earthquake and seismic waves were generated, and since location X is closer to the epicenter of the earthquake than location W, then these seismic waves should reach location X before they reach location W. So correct answer is C, because we can see the measurement of that tremor, that disturbance, that seismic wave occurring at a faster time for X as compared to W. Number 7, a volcanic eruption can affect the atmosphere. By doing what? Well, it's going to release clouds of hot ash and gas and rock fragments in that explosion. So that includes large quantities of gases into the atmosphere, such as sulfur dioxide. Number 8, which of these different positions of the Earth and the Moon will cause the greatest high tides? So tides have to do with both the sun and the moon and the effect of the moon's gravity. And the moon's gravity doesn't pull with the same strength, so we have a different gravitational pull on the Earth with the distance from the moon. So we're looking at high tides and low tides, and those are called spring tides and neap tides. So the tides that have the largest daily tidal range are the spring tides. This happens when the sun, earth, and moon are aligned. So they have to be all aligned. In this case, the alignment that we're looking for would be between sun, moon, and earth. Correct answer is A. Number 9, we have a line drawn across a contour map. So let's take a look at what contour maps can tell us. There are contour lines, and they are at the same elevation, and then there are spaces between the contour lines. They're either close together, indicating a steep slope, or far apart, indicating a gentle slope. And you can have both valleys and mountains. So here's an example of a contour map, and you can see that, again, there's a variety of lines listed there, and some are close together, some are far apart. And then there's a top of a hill or a mountain would be a closed circle. So here we have a valley on the left, and we have a mountain on the right. So therefore, if I'm following that route from point A to point B, there's going to be a valley followed by a mountain. So correct answer to this question is B. Number 10, there's lots of different dots indicating the earthquake, the origin of an earthquake, and earthquakes can occur when we have convergent boundaries between tectonic plates. So if I have a collision between two ocean boundaries, then one oceanic lithosphere is going to collide with another oceanic lithosphere on another plate, and one of the plates subducts under the other, and then that can create volcanoes and earthquakes. So here are earthquake and plate boundaries. So again, at convergent boundaries, you can have earthquakes occur. So correct answer here is the path of the subducting tectonic plate. That's what we're seeing there, where one plate is moving underneath another. Which of these is the best indication of the relative age of a rock layer? So, and as an analogy, we're looking at stacking the newspapers, where the newest newspapers are on top of the pile and the oldest newspapers are on the bottom of the pile. There's a similar situation with layers of sedimentary rock, so that the youngest rock layers are on the top and the oldest rock layers are on the bottom. So, the best indication of the relative age of a rock layer would be the position of the layer compared to the other layers. All right, number 12, which mineral is easily identified by smell? There are a variety of ways of identifying minerals, including color, luster, streak, cleavage and fracture, density, hardness, but smell is very specific for this particular type of mineral known as sulfur, and sulfur smells like rotten eggs. So correct answer is D. Number 13, which of these pieces of basalt rock has probably been in the river the longest? Abrasion is a kind of mechanical weathering that happens when rocks are worn away by contact with other rocks. It can also happen with water and wind and gravity. So water can cause abrasion by moving rocks and making them hit each other. Of course, the water can also just pass over the rocks and make them smooth. So of the four choices, the correct answer is choice C. It's flat and smooth because the water has been flowing over it for a long time, and again, causing that mechanical weathering. Number 14, we have an object, and on the left, we see it is placed in a beaker that contains 100 milliliters of water, and on the right, we see it being placed on a balance, and it has a mass of 70 grams. So the mass is 70 grams, and the volume would be the difference between 100 milliliters of water and then the final volume with the object submerged under the water is 150. So the difference between 100 and 150 is the volume. So now we have mass and volume. So 70 divided by 50 would be the density, and that's 1.4 grams per milliliter. So correct answer is C. Number 15, scientists use the rock cycle to describe certain processes. The rock cycle is made up of all the processes that make new rock out of older rock material. So again, in general, we can change rocks from one kind to another through a variety of processes. So correct answer is B. One type of rock can be changed into another type of rock. Number 16, we see the Mohs hardness scale. And according to this scale, which of these groups of minerals can scratch fluorite? So scientists use reference minerals to find the hardness of unknown minerals. They try to scratch the surface of the unknown mineral with the edge of a reference mineral. And if the reference mineral can scratch the unknown, then the reference mineral is harder. So what's harder than fluorite that would be able to scratch it would be apatite, orthoclase, quartz, topaz, corundum, and diamond. So correct answer is C, apatite, orthoclase, and corundum. Number 17, the Earth's mantle is made up of very hot material that rises to the top of the mantle, cools and then sinks, reheats and rises again. And this particular pattern has to do with convection. So convection happens when matter carries heat from one place to another. Convection happens in the mantle as rock heats up and expands, and then it becomes less dense and rises towards the surface. and then eventually it cools off and sinks, and that process continues. So correct answer is convection currents. Number 18, we're looking at various parts of the sun, the layers. We have the core, the photosphere, the chromosphere, the corona. Which of the layers of the sun is seen during a total solar eclipse? And the answer is that outer layer, the corona. Number 19, barrier islands are a low and narrow sandy island forming a rim offshore of a coastline. So beaches, you can see sometimes the barrier islands out there from the shore, and they are made up of sand. And there's a process of that constantly changing. So the barrier islands are constantly changing because of the natural ebb and flow of waves and currents and winds and tides. They can be reshaped. So the wind and the waves are constantly reshaping and redistributing the sand. That's why these islands are not permanent. Number 20, the different codes are showing us the zone of aeration, the zone of saturation, and the impermeable layer. So we're trying to get water from a well, and that would be in the zone of saturation. So to get the zone of saturation is where the water collects, and therefore the well should be in that particular zone of saturation. So correct answer is C. That is a well that is contacting that zone of saturation where the water is. Number 21, what is this process being illustrated? That's an example of a fault where blocks of rock are on either side of the fault and they are going to move past each other. There's different types of faults. This is a normal fault, a reverse fault, strike-slip faults, but in general you have blocks that are moving past each other in different directions. So we're looking at faulting. Correct answer to number 21 is A. Number 22, in which type of rock are fossils most likely to be found? Again, we know that there's igneous rock, metamorphic rock, and sedimentary rock. So this particular slide is showing information about different types of igneous rocks, intrusive and extrusive, involving magma that cools. Sedimentary rock, there are sediment layers that are deposited. Metamorphic rock involves some sort of heat and pressure changing the rock. But fossils are formed after an organism is buried by sediment, such as mud or sand or volcanic ash, and then after the organism has been buried, more sediment can build up over top of it, and that can form the fossil. So we're looking for sedimentary rock in this case. That is the type of rock in which fossils are most likely to be found. Number 23, where is the humus? The humus is near the top layer. So the humus would be in the top soil. It contains more humus than any other layer of the soil horizon does. So looking for the top layer. So that would be layer 1. In terms of volume, we have Pacific and Atlantic. We're not given the volume, but we know that volume would be area times depth. And the depth is 4.3 and 3.9, which is about the same. But 165 is approximately twice as much as 82. So therefore, the Pacific Ocean, with its much larger area, would have a volume that is approximately twice as much as that of the Atlantic Ocean. So correct answer is A. Number 25, we have these different regions of Virginia. We have the valley and the ridge, the Blue Ridge, the Piedmont, the coastal plain. This is the Piedmont in zone 3. So correct answer is C. We're looking at the day, which is the rotation of a planet, and the planet that has the shortest day in this particular table is Jupiter. So correct answer is C. Here we have an ice shelf that is floating on the ocean, and in general, when things float, it's because they are less dense than their surroundings. So the ice is less dense than the ocean water. Number 28, a natural resource that makes a large contribution to Virginia's economy. So in general, mineral resources of Virginia include coal, crushed stone, sand, gravel, lime, natural gas. In general, the fuel mineral, coal, is rather large. So the coal industry is rather large in Virginia. And so of these four choices, the best answer is coal, not plutonium or aluminum or feldspar. Looking at around a volcano, what type of rock is it? So outside the volcano, there's going to be extrusive igneous rock, which forms when lava cools. Again, it's not going to be intrusive igneous rock because that would be beneath the surface. This is on the side of the volcano. So correct answer is extrusive igneous rock around the volcano that has recently erupted. Here we're looking at both day and night. So we have the bright portion, which is the day, and then that shadow is the night. So we're looking at day and night. So that dark shaded area represents nighttime. This is a symbol for different speeds of wind. And we have calm winds, and then we have, again, getting higher and higher in terms of the speed of the wind. And we're trying to figure out what would be the symbol for a wind speed of 30 knots. So starting from left to right, we have a circle for 0 knots, and then we have a short barb for every 5 knots. A long barb represents 10 knots. So now when we get to 15, it's like one long and one short. 20 would be 2 long barbs. 25 would be 2 long barbs and a short. And then 30 would be 3 of those long barbs. So like 3 times 10 is 30. So of the 4 choices, the best answer would be A. Number 32, gas and dust in an interstellar nebulae. Well, a nebula, or plural nebulae, a nebula is a large cloud of gas and dust, and most stars are born in nebulas. So correct answer is A, stars. Number 33, where is the Earth in our solar system in terms of the different planets? We have the rocky terrestrial planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. We have the gas giants, Jupiter and Saturn, and then the ice giants, Uranus and Neptune. So Earth is one of the inner planets. So correct answer is D. Now we're looking at a map of Virginia, and if we kind of look closely at that layer where Bristol is, it's the same shading of the area where Harrisonburg is also located. So the same type of rock, the same age would be Bristol and Harrisonburg, according to the information on that diagram. Number 35, we're looking at a convergent boundary of colliding tectonic plates. So the plates, and they come together, they can form mountain ranges such as the Himalayas. So why is the increase in elevation occurring? Because of the collision of tectonic plates. CFCs, which are chlorofluorocarbons, a kind of chemical that can destroy the ozone layer. So the ozone hole was caused by chemicals called CFCs that were destroying the ozone layer. So correct answer here is A, destruction of the ozone layer in the upper atmosphere. Here we have a graph of velocity in kilometers per second and distance in millions of light years. So roughly around 500 kilometers per second, approximately around 3 million light years. So if we do that math, 500 divided by 3 is about 170. So the closest answer would be choice A, looking at roughly 150 kilometers per second for every 1 million light years. So we're just kind of reading the labels on that graph. Number 38, we're looking at two different positions of Venus, Q and R, and looking for why it would be brighter at point Q as compared to R when viewing Venus from Earth. So Venus's brightness depends on its closeness to Earth and as well as its phase. Now, when it passes between the Earth and the Sun, which is again what point R represents, then the side that is turned towards the Earth is actually unilluminated, like a new moon. But if it is bright, it would be when that particular region of Venus is illuminated by the sun. So at point Q, more of the visible side of the planet is illuminated than compared to point R. So the sun is helping to illuminate that Venus. It's still going to look like a crescent, but it's going to be very bright because it's getting a lot of sunlight at that point. Wind power is not typically used to generate all the electricity needed for large cities because it's not reliable. It's not going to be consistent, especially in large cities. It's not like there's going to be a lot of consistent wind. So therefore, wind power is not going to be used to generate all the electricity needed for large cities because it's just inconsistent. So yeah, the wind is not strong or regular enough to generate enough electricity for people to use in large cities. All right, number 40, we're looking at weathering causing erosion and then deposition. So what happens when sedimentary rock is formed is that we have sediment, which after erosion, it's moved across the Earth's surface and then deposited in certain layers. And so that erosion followed by deposition is going to create sedimentary rock. People have tried many methods to artificially produce rain. That's known as cloud seeding. Cloud seeding is a type of weather modification that aims to change the amount or type of precipitation that falls from the clouds by distributing these substances in the air that serve as cloud condensation or ice nuclei. So condensation nuclei are what the silver iodide particles are doing, helping to cause water to be produced or ice to be formed. Here we're looking at a label which is about 1 kilometer, and the distance from the current path of the fire and the ranger station is roughly about half that distance. So if the fire is traveling at 1 kilometer per hour, then half of that distance would be, it would take about 30 minutes to reach that ranger station. So correct answer is A. To form a fossil, usually an organism dies, it begins to decay, and if it's buried in sediment, then that can help preserve the organism. So we're looking for it being buried by a mudslide is the best answer. That way it gets preserved. In this case, we're looking at fossil fuels, which include coal, oil, natural gas. 35 plus 27 is 62, plus 17 is 79. So roughly 79% of this graph that we're looking at, this pie chart, represents fossil fuels. That's about a little over 3/4 of energy in this particular chart. So oil, coal, and gas, examples of fossil fuels. Well, hydroelectric power involves water. The problem is that it can, after you have the dam that has been created, it can damage the ecosystem. So it can affect the ecology and the different parts of the river. So the problem here is destruction of free-running rivers and their ecosystems when a dam is built. Which of these mineral properties cannot be used? We talk about luster and color and streak and cleavage and density and hardness, but mass is not a property used to identify a mineral. Here we have different stages of a river valley's development. So the river is going to begin high up in the mountains, and as it flows downhill, it can cut a deep notch in the landscape, and that will eventually get larger and larger. So of these four choices, the one in which the effect on the land is the smallest and has not caused a deep valley to be formed would be the earliest stage of development. So choice A is the best answer for that. B, C, and D are all much later in the development of that river valley. The largest basin in this particular diagram of Virginia is the James River Basin, so therefore the largest river basin is drained by the James River. Ozone is going to be a benefit in the stratosphere, and ozone absorbs energy from the sun and helps to absorb harmful ultraviolet energy. So ozone absorbs ultraviolet radiation. And then we are looking at four different pictures, but the best one that represents the Milky Way galaxy is choice A. All right, that's the last question in this particular 2005 Earth Science SOL test. Hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching.